So I'm going to talk briefly about iconography and application design. I should turn this on. Cool. You know who I am. I work for Albion. We're an advertising agency based in East London. We've also got offices in San Francisco. But we have a digital heart, and we do all sorts of stuff. We don't just do advertising. We do product design and servicing design, that sort of thing. Anyway, early this year, I helped design a product called To Me. It's a native, over-the-top application for iPhone and Android. If you can imagine Skype, but with better audio and a bunch of other quite nice little fun things. Bless you. This is not going to turn into one of those really awful folio pieces. Maybe a little bit. Anyway, so this is To Me. You hit this button, and that happens. Apologies for the quality of the video. So that's basically the core functionality until you go there, but we'll come to that in a minute. You can place locations and send messages and make calls, and that is literally about as complex as it gets. Now, the core interactions were where we spent the bulk of our time. I think because we thought that we had a pretty good handle on settings pages and contacts pages because we're so used to them. We see them every day and we use them every day, so how hard can it be? And I think that's where we maybe failed a tiny bit. Because just because it isn't the bit where everyone spends all of their time, it doesn't mean that it's not as important. Fortunately, we're now in a position to fix some of that because we're doing version 1.x. Anyway, one of the challenges I think we have as an industry is that while the App Store is well moderated, some would say too well moderated, applications created for iPhone and iPad utilize such a wide range of conceptual models. Sometimes it's hard to get your head around what works and how. It's really, really easy to get lost in the woods, so to speak. I think the average lifespan for an application is about 30 seconds. It might be shorter now, but that was last time I checked. And I think that's about right. Because on my phone, I've got weather, I've got Brewster, I've got Path, I've got SpringPad, I've got Nike Fuel Band, I've got Done It, and I've got Clear. And they're lovely. They've got really nice interaction, and the visual design's lovely, but they're fairly forgettable. Has anyone got any of those? Anyone still using Path? Yeah. So, anyway, now interactivity is one thing, and I think we'll all agree that there's a pretty wide gamut of novel mechanics being foisted on us on a daily basis, some of which are based on fairly simple expressions that we're kind of used to, like turning a page, or ones that we can grasp fairly quickly. They're a little bit more tangible and require very little learning. I think everyone in this room at some stage would have pushed a Matchbox car around a table, or done finger painting. Good. So the step to being able to control Angry Birds is not that far. If you look at something like Google Circles, and imagine where the, we'll just wait for this to kick in, where the genus of the sort of slightly over-egged interaction sits. The primary interaction, this sort of dragging and dropping, is something we're really, really used to doing. It looks novel here because it's got a whole bunch of very shiny, fluffy animation that goes around it. But this has been going on for about 25 years, and it's one of the few instances that we can still remember where Microsoft got there first with Windows 2.0. So we get semi-complex interactivity. Those mental models are well established. Dragging and dropping and clicking and almost by proxy, tapping and dragging with our fingers. What we have a little more trouble doing is sticking with the stuff that makes us think a little bit too much. So has anyone used Clear? Is anyone still using it? Yeah. And the reason is? Sorry?
I've got other apps.
You've got other apps that are?
I don't know, I just got used to it.
Yeah, but for taking notes, there are apps that you can just take notes in. You don't need to do this with your hand.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I love Simple Note's great, except when you don't have the internet.
Nothing has ever made me angrier in iOS than Clear.
There you go. Cool, it's not just me. Did anyone, actually, just as a side note, did anyone see the guy who did all those paper prototypes with like the peely back things and then the origami paper prototyping? Anyway, the term for this, as coined by Zach Holman, who works at GitHub, is shit work. Shit work. And I regularly point at screens and bits of paper and go, shit work? To the many talented and wonderful practitioners and designers that I work with, three of whom are sat in the room here today. And we have a short conversation that goes along the lines of, if the user does this, then this happens, and then the user does this, blah, 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 blah. And by this point, I'm doing a face like that, or equivalent, and we'll sit down and work on make the work less shitty and the flow more pretty, which rhymes, so I should be able to remember it. So shit work tends to talk specifically about interaction and making your users do pointless stuff in order to get the most out of their product. And I think we also need to look very carefully when we're designing for mobile and for tablets, any sort of portable device, other than a laptop perhaps, that the amount of mental strain that we're putting on our users outside of the physical interaction. So in 2007, 20 years after they introduced people to dragging and dropping, Microsoft changed the day-to-day for about 1 billion people. They introduced the ribbon. I don't know whether you can see the ribbon using my little magic pointer. No, you probably can't. The ribbon's this bit, in case you didn't know what it was. Now the ribbon did a couple of things. It probably cost the globe trillions of man-hours. And I've been using various iterations of it for the whole time it's been out. And I still hate it. I still think it's counterintuitive. I still spend all my time in help, finding out how to change like the margin widths on both sides of a page. Because I used to be able to do it, it was in a menu. And now it's not really in a menu anymore, it's in this fucking ribbon. Anyway, on the flip side, it also changed the way that billions and billions of people think about interaction. We moved from primarily sort of descriptive, text-based navigation systems. Everyone remembers XP. Who's still using XP? Good. I thought you were going to put your hand up. To a more sort of holistic graphic-led solution. And between Office and Vista, and the impact of Windows 7 with all its bubbles and transparency, it was softened to a greater or lesser extent, and it made the transition, ironically, of PC to Mac user that much easier. So, they kind of shot themselves in the foot by trying to, catch up with the opposition. So pretty much everything on the Mac is icon-based, while the PC is very much more text-based. And people are used to reading the description of something to tell them what it does, rather than recognizing the icon, which in itself is a big switch. Now, on devices with small screen real estate, you can't really use a lot of text. So we have to think about iconography. So who uses Office? It's got to be more than that. Come on, yeah, there you go. More than an hour a day? Come on, it's not porn, it's software. Okay, 3 of you and me. And who hates the navigation? Right. So I think they got it wrong, although I think the premise was right, but the execution was maybe mishandled somewhat. They marginalized, pun intended, what I would classify as the primary navigation, which is actually, can you see the pink bit? It's this bit here. You know, they're tabs. Yeah? Do you often forget that the tabs are there? Yeah. Anyway, it's done, they've done it, and for my sins, I spend hours and hours a day using this whole suite because I'm not allowed to use pages or numbers because other people in the office have PCs. Icons are really, really useful. They convey all sorts of messages in a very concise fashion. This wouldn't really work terribly well on a day-to-day basis, for obvious reasons. Anyway, example time. Here's my kitchen drawer, or one of my kitchen drawers. So there are 6 compartments, and I can convey the contents to you fairly easily. So we've got a spoon, and a knife, and a fork, and the thing that you might have mixed. Corkscrew? Did anyone see the corkscrew? Oh, there was one. Well done. Now, The thing I might have more of an issue with is conveying the name of the container. It's a drawer. There's not really a well-known sort of pre-existing icon for a drawer or something that you might recognize as a drawer. If I showed you this in context of this conversation, you'd probably get that it's a drawer, but out of context, it's a bit of crap. Or I bring the contents together and you fill in the gaps. Remember, the drawer isn't the thing that we're worried about. We're worried about the contents. In much the same way, an address book isn't about the book. You know, it doesn't matter how skeuomorphic Apple want to be. It's about the contacts within it, the people. Or I could sack it all off and just write drawer. Anyway, now combine these new methods of interactivity with minimal screen real estate, and we're headed in one direction. So at the bottom of the Nike Plus stuff, you probably can't see it, it's all silhouetted, it's all really clear, and it's all backed up with copy. The sort of stuff we're accustomed to seeing on desktops and operating systems doesn't float terribly well on handheld devices. Like, that is not going to work on a screen that big. It's just not going to happen. So during the design of 2Me, there were several instances where we thought long and hard about where we should and shouldn't use iconography, and I think we got the balance just about right. So, you know, back is back and inbox is inbox, because back kind of works, but when you've got the same shape, people get confused. Having said that, there's one real niggle in the whole thing, and it's this. And it frustrates me every day I open the application and I look at it. What do you think that means? So this is my inbox, and in the top left-hand corner, I've got that.
Contacts? Your wife is looking over your shoulder.
We're not at home now, Tim. So yeah, kind of, but for me, it's just not. It just isn't working. It basically takes you to the contact screen. It allows you to play with your contacts and invite people, and it's just. Do you not get that? It's just not quite right. It just doesn't feel quite right. It's not descriptive enough. And everything else we sketched and we sketched and we sketched, and we spent loads of time, like probably an inordinate amount of time, doing card sorts with different types of iconography to make sure that, because we've got this core functionality that is wholly dependent on iconography, we wanted everyone to get what, you know, a camera was, what a location marker was. And there are lots of different SKUs of that all over the internet. So it's getting the right one. Anyway, we rushed. We didn't really think it through properly. Maybe we should use something like this, because it's more listy. I don't know. Is it people? Is it lists? Does everyone recognize that as lists? Because that's quite recent. That's not something that's been around that long, but it's proliferated very, very quickly in about 18 months. I think Instagram started using it, and I know Sparrow use it and a bunch of other people, but it's an interesting one. So what I'm saying is, do not stop being inventive and creating new and challenging interactions, but never take iconography or your user's interpretation of iconography for granted, because just don't screw with people's mental models. If your users are expecting a Paul Giametti, make sure it's Paul and not a beaver. Thank you.